Good morning, everyone. We tried to get you out of the rain as soon as we could. We apologize. My name is Matt Schechter. It's my treat to serve as Executive Director of Advertising Week, and this is the kickoff to nearly 100 seminars that will take place over the course of the next 5 days here at the Time Center, which would be our main headquarters, as well as at BB King's and at the Kelly Center, and all over many other locations with our sister organizations who are staging events during the week. I want to be brief and get on and get off. We've got great stuff coming. I just really wanted to thank our dear friends and partners at Nielsen. It's a joy having them involved this year for the first time in a real meaningful way. You'll see Nielsen, members of their esteemed posse and intellectual, high-powered group throughout the week. So I want to thank Ginny and her team, my friend Sabrina Crow, who I'm not sure is here. I know John Burbank is here, and just really give a warm welcome to the Nielsen group as part of our Advertising Week family. And now, on with the show. Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us. My name's Steve Haskett from the Nielsen Company, and it's a great pleasure to be able to be in front of you today and introduce Nielsen's online campaign ratings. At Nielsen, we have a two-part strategy in and around our media business, and the first part of that strategy is to improve all forms of measurement within and across TV, online, and mobile. And the second part is to help our advertising clients and our media clients improve the effectiveness of their advertising. Online campaign ratings is a very big step, we believe, for Nielsen. We hope for the online advertising space and for the media and marketing space more generally. So it's with great excitement that we have a chance to announce this product and get moving on it. What I want to do first is very quickly introduce the folks that are here on stage with me. Next to me is Mike Murphy from Facebook. Next to Mike is Joel Lullenfeld from Moxie. Next to Joel is Susie Deering from Verizon. Next to Susie is Kate Serkin from Starcom MediaVest. And next to Kate is Ari Paparo from Nielsen. I want to make one extra comment on a panelist who's not with us today, and that's Lucas Watson from P&G. Lucas and his wife are expecting a baby any minute now, and he felt it inappropriate to fly to New York and join us. So he's with us in spirit, and Kate will make a few comments about Lucas and about Procter and about how the folks in Cincinnati think about this. So what we're going to do with the next few minutes is I'm going to sit down and be quiet. Ari is going to stand up and walk you in brief through the product and give you a sense for what it is and how it works. We're then going to ask Mike to give the publisher point of view, so he's going to stand up on behalf of Facebook, but also online players more generally, and talk about that. And then Kate is going to say a few words about the advertiser perspective and the agency perspective of Nielsen's online campaign ratings. Once we do that, we'll all sit down and we'll give Susie and Joel a chance to join the group and answer a few questions from me, and then I think more importantly a few questions from you all, should you have them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ari.
Thank you, Steve. I've been very passionate about online advertising and about online advertising measurement for years, and so the opportunity to improve the ability to measure online, especially with respect to brand advertising, is something that I think is really exciting, and that's why what we're talking about here, the online campaign report, is especially groundbreaking. Over the next 2 days at MIX and over the course of Advertising Week, you're going to hear a lot of people. I imagine you can keep count. It's almost like a drinking game. You know, take a shot every time someone says online isn't getting its fair share of advertising dollars. I guess probably somewhere around 15 to 20, my over/under. And then the second thing you're going to hear over and over again is that brand advertisers are reluctant to spend online because of, among other things, measurement. Among other things, the question of what do the metrics mean, how do I compare them to online, how do I compare them to other media. So that's what we're trying to address here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a short video that explains the concept. And since the video will probably be very self-explanatory, I'm going to spend about 3 or 4 minutes explaining it afterwards. So with that, I'm going to dive in.
Here's the problem with online ads. How do you know who really sees them? Here's the answer. Nielsen has a way to turn impressions into a clearer picture of your audience without compromising their privacy. Here's how it works. Your ad gets a Nielsen tag. Thousands view your ad. Through the tag, Nielsen records what's being viewed and by how many. The tag also pings major online publishers who take their data of who's viewing the ad, although the sites never see it or know where it ran, and send the data to a calibration engine. Here, Nielsen fuses the who with the what and the how many, creating a more detailed profile of the types of people who viewed your ad, which enables us to deliver online campaign ratings comparable to TV and other media, featuring key metrics such as reach, frequency, and GRP, with results that can be organized by various criteria, including deeper data sets for marketing mix models, all in reports that can be generated in just days, meaning you get direct in-flight feedback, better campaign measurement, a common approach for online and TV, and ultimately improved marketing ROI, plus clearer audience insights without compromising privacy. Find out how Nielsen can deliver online campaign ratings for you.
So, online campaign ratings. Often people say, well, I can already measure everything online. I can measure through my gross volume on impressions, or I can get a report saying roughly what audience I reach. So this is a change in scale for the ability to measure audiences that's really important, because most of what's available currently is the ability to measure 30 days after a campaign runs with a minimum of a very large campaign size with a limited ability to slice and dice the data. So the three really distinguishing characteristics of this program, I think, take it from being a nice to have to a real important part of the brand ecosystem, are accuracy, timeliness, and the scalability of the program. So I'll talk briefly about each of those three. First, accuracy. So panel-based measurement, as everyone knows, is very accurate, but also has error rates, and the error rates vary depending on the size of the campaign. Through our new methodology, we've already seen a 14% improvement of accuracy of measurement versus a panel-only approach in an online measurement context. So that makes a really big difference when you're looking at these numbers every day to make decisions, to understand the value of media. Second is timeliness. Post-campaign reporting is used to understand how to plan your next media campaign. It's not used in flight to change the decisions you're making and to optimize campaigns. So being able to deliver audience data in flight on a daily basis is an order of magnitude change to what's been available previously. And finally, the scalability. So sample size is always a problem with any type of measurement. And being able to do audience measurement on much smaller campaigns that are using all the advanced techniques of targeting and other mechanisms that are online is a requirement to be able to count on online audience measurement. So the system we've developed works on dramatically smaller sample sizes than any other system that's entirely panel-based. So with that, I have one scary chart. My general rule of thumb is that if a chart's really complex, you should put a headline that says, it's simple. But I didn't have the room on the slide, so you just assume it's simple. But basically, it is simple. So when an ad is run on a website, any website, there are different ways to measure it. So the top measurement, census measurement, is a pixel. So Nielsen records the total volume of impressions that are seen by a given ad. That's straightforward. And the bottom measurement is also straightforward. As probably everyone knows, Nielsen has opt-in panelists across TV and PC that allow us to measure the audience of an online ad. So that exists currently. That is the backbone of this system. But what's unique here is that we are also working with third-party publishers, such as Facebook, to, in real time, make decisions about which audiences were seen on the given impression. So the ad is requesting a pixel from Facebook. Facebook is aggregating on a totally anonymous basis the impressions by demographic group, by age, and by gender. And then it goes into this audience calibration engine that takes the total aggregates from our publishers along with the aggregates from our census measurement and the aggregates from our panel and combines them into one report of reach and frequency by demographic group, that allows the advertiser to see at a very accurate level who is being exposed to a given campaign. So the calibration engine is a unique technology we've developed that is all working on aggregate data, no individual data, not even PII, no individual data at all. And that information is then compiled into our online campaign rating. I'm available for more questions after the panelists and also after this entire session to talk about it in more depth. But the way it works is kind of a very important part to why it's different from what's come before. So with that, I'll stop talking about the details and go, and I'm happy to introduce Mike Murphy from Facebook.
Thank you. It's an exciting time to be in the advertising industry as more and more marketers are looking to shift from the information web to a social web and create some really interesting opportunities. As marketers are looking to reach people instead of just eyeballs, the opportunity continues to get better and better with regard to creating cross-platform integrated opportunities. Old analog metrics like impressions and clicks aren't doing anybody a favor in the marketing community. So with Nielsen and with this project, it's really important that we come together and come up with something more a simpler process that both planners, strategic agencies, and media agencies can use. Last year on this stage, we announced our first relationship with Nielsen on a product called BrandLift. Since then, we've done well over 200 studies together where we've seen significant changes in the way that we measure performance and are finding more and more ways for marketers to do the same. And we believe this is a great opportunity for us and for publishers. We look very forward to working with our agency partners and also the brands to come up with something meaningful here and are excited to be a part of it. Next up, Kate Sirkin from Starcom MediaVest to give a perspective from both the client and the agency.
Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of Procter & Gamble as well as Starcom MediaVest Group this morning. And as you heard, he made the right decision to stay at home with his wife who was about to give birth. As a mother and a wife, I know he made the right decision. I have 2 children and both were delivered early, so happy to be here and speaking on his behalf. We had a call on Friday afternoon and we realized we were both saying exactly the same thing. So I think it, as well, in the interest of not duplicating our talks today, it's good for you guys as well. So the challenges of digital measurement. It seems so simple, doesn't it? Digital is the ultimate measurable media that we all have. Everything's tracked, right? So I know none of us are so naive in this audience this morning, but what does the digital ad buying and selling process look like? Why is it not so simple? Why is it hard to measure? Why is this Nielsen and Facebook announcement so important today? This is why. We plan, buy, and post on different metrics in the online world. I want to acknowledge, first of all, the work that the Council for Research Excellence has done. This is a chart that I've taken from a recent education program that they ran. The CRE is a Nielsen-funded organization working to improve the quality of all audience measurement. It's independent from Nielsen, but obviously we share the results back with Nielsen with the view to improve audience measurement over time. And the CRE recently presented this to a group of Nielsen clients as part of its education role. And I think the chart sums up the problem perfectly. The primary currency for digital sales is the ad impression, as we all know. Plans are developed right now in all kinds of systems in agencies and advertisers' workplaces. Though we know Comscore and Nielsen Online do have penetration across most of those places. And the posts are a combination of impressions and clicks and custom survey work and all kinds of different things. Audience measurement in its traditional world, reach, GRPs, and frequency, constitute such a secondary part of today's online buying world that it's just hard to make comparisons. It's hard for advertisers to think in similar currencies across all of their media buys. And that's what this is looking to solve today. And in case you thought the digital workflow that I just showed was simple, here's a snapshot of the more complicated one that really we all exist in. And if you just look at all of those measurements, these companies and products all together form the marketplace that we buy and sell in. And it's a bit like the Wild West. Times are evolving so fast that probably most of this is out of date already anyway. Many firms with many, many different metrics, processes, and algorithms for data collection, data matching, ad serving, and reporting. And we know that many of them provide significant benefits for the advertising brands that use them, But it's really hard to know which one and how to understand that and how to speak about it in language that both CMOs and regular people, not digital people, can understand. And again, that's why I think this initiative this morning is so important. So what came out of the CRE's education process were the top 3 things for the digital industry to do to help the rest of the world understand what it was all about and how it could help brands to increase the reach against their target consumers. And audience measurement and accountability metrics were the top 3, as silly as that might seem. What we're really trying to understand is very simple, basic questions. Who's seeing the ad? How many times? And where? But we need to understand that across the whole digital spectrum. We need to understand it across the hybrid measurement solutions that Nielsen has. We need to understand it against the behavioral targets that we all are very excited about using, and across long-tail sites. We need to understand them, though, at all stages of the planning and buying process. So what this initiative could do for the industry today, and I think it's incredibly positive that it's happening now, it will provide a way forward for the online industry, a way to better compete for money against television, although from an agency and advertiser's perspective, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a much more media-neutral way to allocate budgets for clients. It'll provide a much better understanding of actual impression delivery amongst the target and other, the demographic targets and other different kinds of targets that we need to look at. It'll be delivered faster so that campaigns can be adjusted in real time. It can be used to supplement the information that we put into market mix modeling. Anybody that's been doing that for digital campaigns just knows how awful that process is today and how much money is the online industry is losing from that bad methodology that we're all using. It'll provide a much better understanding of the actual duplication between television and online campaigns, and online within publisher by channel. And it'll provide a much better understanding of the most efficient way to build reach against our target consumers. And that's really, from our side, what all we're looking to do. It's quite simple. All of which is good for the advertising, buying and planning industry. I think it's about time that the online world were given the tools to be able to compete effectively with the other media within today's marketplace. And the same for the advertisers. Allocate efficiently between those different media and account for it at the end. So I think we're going to go back to the group and do Q&A now.
So just as a reminder, I'm going to ask the group a couple of questions, and then we're going to open it up to any questions that you may have for each and any of the participants today. So if I could start with Susie. Susie, from a Verizon standpoint, as you think about your marketing spend and the allocation, what does this mean?
Needless to say, I think about our marketing spend quite often, given the fact that it's a pretty hefty amount. And I look at this as a great opportunity because it's the accountability that we need, it's the transparency that we need, and I also look at it as a right step, right? So there's always steps in these types of programs because as we look at it, I don't look at it as one silo that it's answering for online, it's actually helping us across the board. And any of that education is always helpful given the fact that we have the tough role on an advertiser side to ensure, great little buzzwords like ROI and overall measurement and so forth. So I think that, this is definitely, again, it's a step. It's not the sole answer, but it's a step in the right direction.
Right. And Joel, from a Moxie perspective, will this hurt? Will it help? Will it hinder? What's it going to mean for you guys?
From an agency perspective in general, this is a big step forward, as Susie was saying. I think there are 3 points about this that got me thinking. The first was that this is a step forward, and as the rest of the media world becomes only more digital, and TV becomes only more IP-based, and our magazines become only more IP-based, it's good to establish this measurement foundation now. We've had the GRP for many, many years, and I look at this as a refreshment and a more accurate way. The second thing that's really important is, especially in the digital world, is this is an important measurement, but not the only measurement. So for digital marketers, this isn't going to replace any of the action metrics or trackability that's unique to the space, but it is going to definitely give us a good denominator to look at media across the board. And the third point is really, the digital hippie in me, when I first heard this, got a little nervous hearing about shoving our line into GRPs, to be honest. And I thought about it for a while, and I got really excited to see that we are actually coming out with a standard, and it's important to have a unit of measurement. And I still measure my car power and horsepower, and it's important to have a standard, and this is really going to only help us allocate intelligently moving forward.
Just to talk, Mike, as Joel talks about the allocation, how does Facebook think about working with some of the other types of media? So working with whether it be television networks or other sort of more traditional forms of media.
Yeah, I think that this week, there's a lot of buzz in all of the press right now about digital being a direct response vehicle and TV being a branding vehicle. I don't think that you'll hear much from Facebook as far as trying to convince marketers for taking money out of TV and moving it to digital. A lot of marketers are already doing that. What we want to work with marketers to do is to make their TV campaigns perform better. So we believe that TV plus Facebook is greater than TV. And the way to show that is to run those campaigns together, make those campaigns more social, find ways to measure them in post, but to be able to plan them in advance and to have metrics that you can plan against create a far better opportunity. But for us, it's not about trying to convince marketers to take more money out of TV. At this point, we're trying to work with marketers to make sure that all of their different platforms perform better.
Thanks, Mike. Kate, is that how you talked a bit about the allocation process? Is that how you think about it at Platform?
I think so. There's a couple of different ways to think about it. One is, what's the strategic objective of the campaign? How can you make that work harder? How can you make it richer? So there's various different metrics you need for that. But at the simple start of any budget allocation process, you need to know how many people does your channel reach, how much does it cost, and how is it likely to work? And if you don't have those things, it's hard to move forward. And right now, digital doesn't have any credible figures in that space.
Let me ask one last question, then I'll open it up to Q&A. Susie, you talked about steps and this being a great next step. Where do you think, would you see it? Where would you like it to go over time? So what would be the sort of, from your perspective, as you make hard decisions around Verizon's marketing spend, what would be ideal for you, and how could Nielsen or other folks would bring help?
Well, I think Joel alluded to this, which is the steps for me are, one, and I have to laugh because I also look and I go, kind of in the first discussions, it's like, okay, you go to GRPs and you think, there's a lot that I still wish that I could understand about my TV audience. And I get a little nervous when I think about the fact that from an online audience perspective, I can understand or know so many things that I don't want to hold them hostage just because of the fact that I can get more learnings from my online audience. I also, from a staging or steps perspective, look at it and think, it is exactly what Joel said, which is we are in a digital space. So given the fact that I don't consider vehicles being or media being consumed in just silos, and looking at it from a cross-platform perspective, we've been doing cross-platform promotions and programs now for, oh gosh, at least the last 2, possibly even 3 years, and I know that we've been talking about it for the last 5. So now I feel like I have a step in the right direction to say, how do I really deliver that across the cross-platform kind of space, and actually have true measurement there and understand exactly who's consuming what and when, because I don't know about you, but the last time that I sat down to watch a TV program by myself without any other device around me, I don't know when that was because it's so far, so long ago. So besides the fact that it's either I have my laptop there, or now with the whole tablet conversion, not to mention obviously something near and dear to my heart, which is wireless. So that just in itself just says that we as advertisers haven't pushed the marketplace hard enough, and I think this gives us that chance to do that, because on the flip side of it, the media partners are sitting there saying, but I don't know how to talk to you about it. There's not a common currency there.
Joel, does that make the digital hippie in you happy?
Yes, the digital hippie is dancing.
Again. Well, unless there are any other comments you guys would like to make, why don't we open it up and see whether anyone here has any questions for any one of the participants this morning. Yeah. So I'll let Ari pile on here. To Susie made the point. This is the first and very important step. This measures the age and gender, reach and frequency in a way that will be comparable to other types of media. At Nielsen, our product roadmap is to then add on the effectiveness measures. And I suppose the good news, selfishly from our point of view, is that we have those measures ready to go in the form of IAG and the branded product that Mike talked about. So we can relatively easily overlay those.
I will jump on to that. If you think about the entire funnel that we always talk about, the top of the funnel is reach. And there are a lot of tools to measure the rest of the funnel in terms of engagement, things along those lines, or surveys. What this also allows is that we now have a common denominator for all those equations. We've only been calculating the numerator and then dividing by impressions, let's say. Now we can say, what was the receptivity or the reaction to a campaign based on who we actually reached, which is probably the most fundamental question.
Yeah, in the middle here.
I got the mic, so I guess that must be necessary.
Did you bring that with you?
Yeah, I keep one in my pocket at all times. It's David Cole from Ernst & Young. I agree this is an amazing first step, but it's a step. And one of the critiques that we hear from our clients, that was not me. I just want to be clear, I did not make that.
We do that when we don't like the way the questions go.
Can you rephrase it nicer?
So what we hear from our clients, though, in the context of this being a first step, is that while reach and frequency metrics across platforms are absolutely critical, sample sizes need to come up in order for us to, the industry, to have a better handle on where consumers are in a model that, unlike television, is so extensively long tail. I'd just like to throw it out to the panel about how the sampling size, how the audience sizes need to increase in order to make this really, I'll say, the next step of this first step.
Let me dive in. That's exactly why we built this product, because having a panel-only solution has a sample size problem, and as you indicated, the most cutting-edge techniques in online are fragmenting the size of the buys rather than going broad. We think this solution actually solves that problem by having a methodology that's not just hybrid, but combines three sources of data: the panel, which has a high degree of accuracy, the census, which gives a volume, and then a group of publishers who have very wide coverage in terms of the number of people reached. We think we can overcome that. In our work to date, we found a 14% increase in quality in terms of reduction in the error rates of panel only versus this new methodology. We think we could push that quite a bit further so that we can measure with a very high degree of accuracy even the smallest campaigns.
You all buy that, by the way, on the panel?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes. Yeah, from my perspective, I'm excited and I applaud Nielsen for looking outside the box for a solution to this problem. I think in the traditional search method you would never have got to something that would provide adequate sample size to measure the kind of things that we're buying.
We asked the same questions. We got the answer that we needed before we were even sitting on the stage.
yeah, our biggest fear is that this would be the most accurate way compared to other ways of measuring measurement, and that's a good thing because this, as Mike talked about the social web, we're signing into our phones now with things like Facebook and Twitter, and we'll soon be signing into our TVs with the same type of social login. So we'll get that measurement at that scale.
Yeah, just from our perspective, we're excited that, with our reach within the U.S., it's significant. But we believe that other publisher partners are going to deliver together with us significantly better reach and a much bigger audience that we can measure more broadly.
Yeah, we had a question here.
Carol Geller with the 4As. You opened up the conversation saying that the center of this is going to be a Nielsen tag, which seems to be a tracking pixel. How does this fit in with all of the various pixels and tags and other objects that are now inside of advertising assets? And we've started to see a real plethora of these things, and they're starting to actually impact the speed and the weight of individual advertising assets. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think that's another issue that's dear to my heart, but not most people don't care. So we're not solving that problem. The proliferation of pixels in ads is an operational issue that the online industry is facing, everyone cares about latency because it matters and it impacts user performance. I think that this is something that, as a whole, we still need to work on in terms of intelligently only showing the pixels that we need, as opposed to showing 20 or 30 or however many. I don't have much comment as to how to actually solve it, because I think it's beyond the scope of what we're doing here.
Sorry, are there any variations in the model adjustment or mobile, or is it?
Today's discussion is in and around the online space. We're working hard on the mobile extension. You had a question in the center here?
How do you use, I guess, the duplication? So I read this week there's 110 billion users in the Australian market. We've got a population of 21 million. I use my iPhone Touch, I use my mobile, I might use my laptop. I might not always be logged into Facebook. So how do you deal with that aspect when you've got tracking pixels, you've got retargeting, that are spread across 5 different platforms for one user?
I think it's a particularly bad problem in Australia where we have multiple personalities. I'm going to let Ari.
I get all the questions here. Well, there's a couple of things. First, the problem of the same user logging in multiple places or having multiple devices, that's actually handled in 2 ways. Our online panelists are prompted to ask who is actually using the computer at a given time, and it is installed across computers on their home computer. And secondly, with our publisher logins, that is consistent across devices, potentially. Now, going from online to mobile is a challenge that we haven't tackled yet, so this is online, but we expect to continue to invest in that area because mobile is obviously of key importance to online measurement moving forward.
I have a question about the demographics. Since when you registered for Facebook, you put in demos. I'm assuming in the Nielsen panel, you put in demos. But with all of these aggregate data forms from the publishers, there aren't always demos. So for this entire database, are some of the demos simply inferred or ascribed, which is what I'm guessing. Is that correct?
Me again. This is entirely based on demos, either from Nielsen panels or from registration data from a publisher partner. Just to be clear, because I know there's been some confusion on this point, this program works for advertisement across any publisher partner, whether they participate by providing data or not. So it can run, the ad can run anywhere. So there's no limitation where this is only applicable to sites that have demographic data. But the measurement is dependent on registration-based demographic data. We're not using any ascription or inference models.
We've got a question way up there in the back. I don't know whether we can get a microphone up there.
Yeah, I'm Mark Contreras from EW Scripts. I just had a question. How do you see the system working in tandem with ABC, which handles and serves print products, particularly newspapers and magazines? Have you had any discussions with those organizations trying to blend in what you're trying to do here?
Yeah, we've certainly had discussions with the online publisher components of a number of the major newspaper brands and players about talking about how their online properties would benefit from this. We haven't yet extended that into the print realm and how those two things will come together. We haven't done that yet.
I have a question over here.
Okay, sorry, I'm having a hard time.
That's all right. So you're tagging advertisements digitally now, and does this impact your combination with Monitor Plus tagging TV ads so that you could do it cross media? This person was exposed to X amount of TV, X amount of online, and then do some kind of analysis across that?
Certainly that's the vision, although it's not directly tied to Monitor Plus tagging. Our online and PC households have panel software on their computers as well as their TVs, so we have a single source panel that can go across the media. So while the primary goal here is to allow us to provide measurement that's exactly compatible with TV, a secondary goal is to actually do crossover measurement between the two media.
Okay, does anyone have a question for someone other than Ari? Yeah, just yet.
For Verizon, how do you manage sort of moral hazard with working with companies that offer measurement or something like that? How do you make sure that they're being accountable in an age when people are serving invisible ads and that kind of thing?
So from a privacy standpoint or from just a...
from an accounting standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to a few different topics. We talked about tagging and the difficulties there, so actively working and pursuing like universal tagging type of places. Having ad serving information and using that as an answer key when in doubt. Also ad verification services. We work with a few different ones as well on behalf of Verizon. So there's a multitude of different types of auditing against protection, things like invisible ad or cookie stuffing or anything like that. We look at this more as a pure kind of reach and frequency measurement answer key across the board. There are definitely other measures that Verizon and other organizations take to protect against those.
If I could just add to that, I think one way to think about Nielsen's role, or for that matter, any other third-party independent measurement provider, is it's analogous to being an umpire or a referee on the field. And if in any way, shape, or form we favour one advertiser over another, or one publisher or media company over one media over another, then the buying and selling community pretty quickly come to the conclusion that our metrics aren't as valuable as they thought when they were starting to make decisions based on them. So, from our point of view, our model doesn't work if we favour one over the other in any way, and that's why in launching a product like this, we think hard about where the data is coming from and how we're putting it together, and we think hard about how that will potentially be tied with our other types of measurement.
We don't want this to be yet another competing measurement. We really want to look to this as one that the whole community is helping to build.
Yeah, we have a question over that.
How would you compare this solution to advertisers who are more apt to go towards a cost per click or a cost per acquisition model, something that's a little bit of a lower risk up front? What would you say to those kind of advertisers?
It's what your goal is.
Yeah, exactly.
This is either ground up goal, budgeting, where you say this is the action I want and this is what I'm willing to pay for it, and you can go there until you have a point of diminishing returns, or you can start the other way, which is a reach goal. I want this percent of the population because it's a new message or a new product.
Yeah, I don't see this as it's definitely not a replacement, right? So it's definitely looking at saying it's just another piece or another point from a measurement perspective. I mean, when we go into many of our campaigns, we're looking at campaigns, we know in the back end what we want and how we're going to, obviously the key measurements that we're going to be wanting to look at and evaluate. So I look at this, again, as those steps that we talked about. This is a step towards that direction of saying, okay, how do I make sure that from a cross-platform perspective, I'm really delivering on reaching the folks that I said I was going to reach, and I'm also delivering on a little bit richer from an information perspective as far as really who are they, right? From an attitudes or behavior, demographic kind of information.
We have time for one last question. Yeah.
I would assume that each publisher has a different way or a different process for registering. So how would the different registration processes impact the data? I assume that some sites, perhaps, people will give up before they complete registration.
I guess I'll take that. So that big amorphous cloud that's called the calibration engine is part of our secret sauce here, where we look with each partner to research the reliability of the data, the ways in which it's represented, the ways in which it's available, and calibrate essentially against the Nielsen panel to optimize the accuracy.
Okay, one last. Yeah. I think let me have a go at that, and then maybe Kate, Susie, and Joel can add on. For the way we sort of set out about this, it is initially designed for branded advertisers. It's designed for the display component of their campaign. So, I think to the point made earlier, whether it's looking at more of a cost per click or a cost per action model, I think it sits alongside those and addresses different marketing needs. That's the way we've sort of thought about it initially. And obviously, the two need to come into the overall marketing mix and be looked at.
I'll add one answer to that. As I mentioned before, when we start our budget allocation process, we need to know the reach of each of the options that we're looking at. And we'd still push in the industry to think about how that might work for search. there are some, some challenges there because they don't track a lot of the information. But I have to believe with all the smart minds, certainly on this panel and in the audience, there is a way to get that data so that we can have more comparable metrics across all the different contact options that we've got today.
I will say that this is really an audit against planned reach. So you set out to hit this goal, and then we have a means of saying you hit it or you didn't hit it, and holding publishers and everyone accountable for it. With search, it's definitely more of a, if they're asking for it at that limited time, it's going to be delivered. And it's hard to tell Google that we want more people to search for a certain word. Accountable for it, as much as we want to.
Okay, well, we've run out of time, but thank you everyone for attending. It's been a great pleasure.